There comes a moment in life when you realize that breakthroughs don't come from what you do occasionally, but from what you train yourself to do consistently. And if you've ever wondered why you start strong but fade out when it matters most, it's not because you're weak, incapable, or unworthy. It's because your mind has been conditioned to chase comfort instead of growth. But today, this moment right here, is where you begin the powerful process of rewiring your brain to fall in love with consistency, to crave discipline, to hunger for the small daily steps that lead you toward the life you're meant to live. You must understand this. Your brain is always listening. It listens to your habits, your patterns, your excuses, your beliefs. It forms pathways based on repetition, not intention. You can dream big dreams, but if your actions whisper hesitation day after day, your brain will believe the whisper over the dream. That is why changing your life does not begin with motivation. It begins with training. Training your mind the way a blacksmith shapes steel, with heat, pressure, and repetition. Consistency is not glamorous, it's not loud, it's not celebrated. It doesn't come with applause or recognition. Consistency happens in the quiet places, the moments no one sees, the choices no one praises, the sacrifices no one acknowledges. But these hidden moments are where your destiny is forged. When you show up every day, even when you're tired, even when you're frustrated, even when you don't see results, you are carving new pathways in your brain, pathways that declare, "This is who I am now. This is what I do. This is how I rise." You must teach your mind that discipline is not punishment. Discipline is the highest form of self-respect. It is you telling your future, "I believe in you enough to work for you." Every time you push through laziness, discomfort, or doubt, you are telling your brain a new story. You are proving to yourself that you have power over your impulses, power over your fears, power over your old identity. And slowly your brain begins to follow your lead. What once felt difficult becomes natural. What once required force becomes your instinct. The actions that used to drain you begin to energize you. This is the power of rewiring your mind. But understand this, consistency is not about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about building a rhythm within yourself, a rhythm that matches the life you want to create. There will be days when you stumble, when you fall, when your old habits try to drag you back into who you used to be. But every comeback rewires your brain even more than your victories. Every time you fall and rise again, your mind learns resilience. Every time you refuse to quit, your mind learns endurance. Every time you show up after failing, your mind learns loyalty to your purpose. The greatest version of you is hidden behind routines you haven't built yet, behind consistency you haven't embraced yet, behind discipline you haven't practiced yet. But that version of you is real. It's waiting, and the key to unlocking it is daily, repetitive, intentional action. Start small. Start with a habit so simple your brain cannot reject it. Start with 5 minutes. Start with 1 page. Start with 1 repetition, because the brain doesn't change through leaps. It changes through patterns, and when your patterns shift, your life shifts. When your habits elevate, your identity elevates. And when your identity rises, your destiny rises with it. This is your time to rewire your mind, retrain your focus, rebuild your discipline, and reshape the way you show up in the world. Love the process. Love the progress. Love the daily steps that no one sees. Because consistency is not just an action. It is a mindset, a lifestyle, a commitment to greatness. When you learn to love consistency, nothing can stop you. Not fear, not doubt, not delay, not setbacks. Because you have taught your brain to follow through, to persevere, to stay aligned with the person you are becoming. There is a point in every person's life where they must confront the truth that success is not built on intensity, but on consistency. Many people wait for the perfect moment, the perfect burst of motivation, the perfect wave of inspiration to carry them forward, but people who rise are the ones who understand that the brain responds not to emotions but to patterns. Your mind learns what you repeatedly do, and if you want to change your life, you must first change what you teach your brain to expect every single day. The greatest battle you will ever fight is not with the world around you, but with the patterns inside you that have convinced you to settle for less than your potential. Consistency is difficult because your mind is constantly negotiating with comfort. Comfort wants you to stay the same, to repeat the familiar, to choose ease over evolution. But transformation only happens when you interrupt the familiar with deliberate, repeated action. Every time you push past resistance, you are rewiring the circuits of your brain. You are teaching yourself that you can do hard things, that you can follow through, that you can rise above your impulses. And once your brain begins to understand that effort is your new normal, consistency becomes not a burden but a rhythm. Your brain was never designed to change overnight. It was designed to change through repetition. This is why small daily habits are more powerful than sporadic bursts of effort. A single day of discipline may inspire you, but 1,000 days of discipline will transform you. When you show up even when you don't feel like it, you are building neurological pathways that anchor your identity to action rather than emotion. You are teaching your mind that you are dependable, focused, and committed. And the more you reinforce this story, the more your brain begins to love the process of consistency itself. People often underestimate the quiet power of routine. They want dramatic results but dismiss the daily steps that create them. They want the mountain but ignore the climb. The truth is that your brain thrives on predictability. When you build a routine and stick to it, you give your mind a clear direction and a sense of stability. In that stability, your productivity increases, your clarity sharpens, and your inner confidence grows. You begin to trust yourself in ways you never have before. You start to realize that discipline is not a prison. It is freedom. It frees you from the chaos of inconsistency, from the frustration of starting over, from the disappointment of unfulfilled goals. To rewire your brain, you must choose actions that align with the life you want, not the life you are trying to escape. You must create patterns that support your progress instead of your procrastination. You must remind yourself daily that you are not working for the moment. You are working for the future version of you who will depend on choices you make right now. With each repeated action, the old you weakens and the new you grows stronger. Your brain begins to associate progress with pleasure, effort with empowerment, discipline with self-respect. And once that shift happens, you no longer have to force consistency because your mind will crave the very habits that shape your destiny. Consistency becomes powerful when you stop treating it like an obligation and start treating it like an identity. Most people try to force themselves into discipline for a few days, maybe a few weeks, but they burn out because they haven't shifted the way they see themselves. They are trying to act disciplined while still thinking like someone who quits. They are trying to build new habits while carrying the old identity that sabotaged them. But real transformation happens the moment you decide that consistency is not something you do. It's who you are becoming. When you begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who keeps their word to themselves, someone who shows up even when excuses scream for attention, your brain takes that identity and begins to build new pathways that support it. Your brain loves familiarity. It will always choose what it recognizes over what it needs. This is why repeating the same patterns feels easier than creating new ones, even when those old patterns hurt your progress. Every consistent action, no matter how small, begins to introduce a new pattern to the mind. When you do something repeatedly, your brain starts to understand that this new behavior is safe, expected, and normal. This is the beauty of consistency. It slowly overwrites your old programming and replaces it with a stronger, more disciplined version of you, and soon what once felt uncomfortable becomes your natural rhythm. You must also understand that your brain cannot grow without challenge. You cannot build strength without resistance. When you choose consistency, you are choosing to train your brain to operate beyond impulse, beyond mood, beyond fatigue. You are teaching yourself that progress isn't built on how you feel, but on what you repeatedly choose. And the more you choose action over emotion, the more powerful your mind becomes. You start to realize that the gap between who you are and who you want to be is not filled with intensity, but with daily discipline. The reason many people fail is not because they lack talent, intelligence, or potential. It is because they lack emotional endurance. They quit when the excitement fades. They stop when the results aren't immediate. They break their rhythm the moment discomfort shows up. But every time you push through discomfort, your brain learns resilience. Every time you show up without seeing results, your brain learns patience. Every time you take action instead of waiting for motivation, your brain learns leadership. These are the traits that build great lives, great careers, great destinies. To rewire your brain, you must create moments of intentional repetition. Wake up with clarity. Decide what your non-negotiables are. Train your mind to expect progress. When you tell your brain what the day will be, instead of letting the day tell you, you step into a level of authority within yourself that changes everything. This authority is what makes consistency sustainable. When you give your mind direction, when you remind it daily who you are becoming, you begin to operate with a sense of purpose that no distraction can break. As you build these consistent actions, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to trust yourself, and that self trust becomes fuel. When you trust yourself, you stop delaying, you stop doubting, you stop hesitating. Your mind becomes steady, focused, and aligned with your goals. The noise around you loses its power. The temptation to procrastinate weakens. You start to enjoy the process because your brain begins to associate consistency with progress and progress with self-worth. This is the rewiring that turns an ordinary person into an unstoppable one. The journey isn't always loud or dramatic. It is quiet. It is steady. It is built in moments when no one is watching, but those moments are where the mind transforms. Those moments are where identity forms, and those moments are where your future begins to shift in the direction of everything you were created to become. Consistency becomes the turning point of your life when you realize that greatness is not created in explosive moments, but in the quiet discipline of everyday choices. People often imagine success as a dramatic breakthrough, a sudden blessing, a moment of recognition, but long before any of that arrives, there are days filled with repetition, days where nothing seems to move, days where the only victory is that you showed up. These are the days that rewire your brain, because every time you repeat an action aligned with your purpose, you strengthen the pathways that carry you toward your destiny. Your brain starts to understand that you are no longer living by chance or emotion, but by intention. It learns that you can be trusted with the future you say you want. Your mind will resist at first because it is programmed for survival, not evolution. It loves the familiar even if the familiar is harmful. It clings to old habits because they feel safe even when they hold you back. This is why the early stages of consistency feel uncomfortable. You are not just building new habits. You are breaking mental agreements you made with your old self. Agreements that said you were someone who quit, someone who tried but never finished, someone who waited for motivation instead of creating momentum. But as you continue forward day after day, your brain begins to understand that those agreements are no longer valid. It starts forming new beliefs about who you are becoming, beliefs built on discipline, commitment, and self-respect. Consistency is not about doing everything perfectly. It is about refusing to surrender to your excuses. It is about showing up with what you have, even when it isn't much. It is about keeping promises to yourself, especially when emotions shift and energy fades. Your brain grows every time you honor those promises. It adapts, it strengthens, it begins to crave the routine you once avoided. And soon, the very habits that once felt heavy become the habits that lift you. The work that once felt draining becomes the work that grounds you. Your actions become expressions of your purpose rather than reactions to your feelings. You must also understand that consistency creates clarity. When you commit to doing the small things daily, your mind becomes sharp, focused, and aligned. You stop wasting energy on confusion or indecision. You stop drifting from task to task. You stop being pulled by distractions. Instead, you develop a mental rhythm, a steady internal pulse that guides your steps. This rhythm is what separates those who wish from those who win. It is what allows you to move forward even when the path is difficult, because your mind has learned how to work through resistance instead of retreating from it. There will always be moments when you feel tired, moments when progress seems invisible, moments when you wonder if any of it is working. But these are the moments where rewiring is happening most powerfully. These are the moments when your old patterns are being challenged and replaced. These are the moments that determine whether you return to who you were or rise into who you are becoming. Every time you choose discipline over doubt, action over avoidance, commitment over comfort, your brain is being reshaped. And with each choice, you move closer to a version of yourself that is stronger, clearer, and more capable than anything you have ever experienced. When your mind learns to love consistency, it becomes your greatest ally. It becomes the engine that carries you through seasons of uncertainty. It becomes the anchor that keeps you from drifting back into old patterns. It becomes the reminder that progress is always happening, even when you cannot see it. And as this transformation takes place within you, the world around you begins to shift as well, because a disciplined mind creates a disciplined life, and a disciplined life opens doors that inconsistency could never reach.